Millionaire woman offered $1 million for a night with a poor black man. His secret silenced her. Yes, that's a lot of money, a life-changing amount most of us could only dream of. But did he say yes? Grab a hot cup of coffee or steep yourself some tea, sit back, and get ready to dive into a story that might just surprise you. She had power, money, and her name carved on glass towers in Dallas. Rachel Simmons closed 7-figure deals before breakfast, but couldn't sleep a full night alone. She was the woman who never heard no, until him. Malik worked at a no-name massage studio out in Fort Worth. No business card, no small talk. Just calm hands and a quiet soul. Rachel came in for stress relief. She walked out haunted. Something about Malik unraveled her. He didn't flirt, didn't chase, didn't care about who she was. So she did what powerful people do when they feel powerless. She tried to buy control. One night, $1 million. No strings, just a number on paper. He looked her dead in the eye and said, "I've already lost too much to sell what's left of me." Then he walked away. No hesitation, no second glance. And just like that, the woman who built her world on power was disarmed by silence. But here's what Rachel didn't know. Malik wasn't just some massage guy. He was hiding a past filled with legacy, loss, and a name more powerful than her own. A name he'd buried. For a reason. And what started with one rejected offer would uncover $1 million secret and a love that no money could buy. Everyone knew Rachel Simmons. Her name graced the top of business magazines. Her face was on billboards next to words like visionary and Texas real estate queen. She didn't just own property, she built legacies, one high-rise at a time. Simmons Co. was her kingdom, and Dallas was her empire. From the outside, she had it all. 3 homes, one in Highland Park, one in Aspen, and a ranch outside Fredericksburg, a Mercedes G-Class SUV, a Rolex that could pay off someone's mortgage, and front row seats at every gala that mattered. But every night, that same silence greeted her when she walked in the door. No footsteps, no dinner waiting, no laughter bouncing off the walls. Just the hum of a sub-zero fridge and the faint echo of a woman who once believed love was part of the deal. Her marriage had ended 2 years ago. Michael Whitmore, charming in public, distant in private. A corporate lawyer who loved his own ambition more than he ever loved her. To him, Rachel was a brand. A power couple. Something to present, not protect. The divorce was clean, cold, clinical. He kept the stocks, she kept the skyline. But what Rachel didn't keep was warmth. She hadn't been touched in months, really touched. Not just physically, but soul deep. No one asked how she was, no one dared, until her assistant Vanessa gently suggested she take a break. "Try the spa I told you about," she said. "It's not fancy, but it's quiet." Rachel scoffed at first. No name, no Instagram page, no valet parking, but the stress had built up like bad concrete, cracked, heavy, irreversible. That Thursday she canceled a meeting and drove herself to a small brick building near Fort Worth's south side. No sign, just one frosted glass door. Inside it smelled of eucalyptus and cedarwood. A young woman at the desk said, "You're booked with Malik." She expected a kid. Maybe someone too talkative, or too eager to impress. But when Malik walked into the room, tall, calm, confident, Rachel felt something tighten in her chest. He didn't smile too much. He didn't call her ma'am. He simply nodded, offered a warm towel, and asked if she had any pain. "Only the kind that doesn't go away," she said. He said nothing. Just nodded again, and for the next 60 minutes Malik moved without words. No forced conversation, no fancy oils, just steady hands, quiet strength, and a kind of presence that made Rachel forget where she was. It wasn't just muscle tension he touched, it was memory, the divorce, the betrayal. The night she cried in her car so no one would see. She left the spa without a word, drove straight home. Parked in her driveway for 10 full minutes, wondering what the hell had just happened. This wasn't supposed to happen. She didn't get moved. She didn't feel, not anymore. But something had cracked. And in that crack something had slipped through. She didn't know it yet, but that 1 hour with Malik would undo everything she thought she knew about power, pride, and love. Malik Jefferson didn't need to speak loudly to be heard. He stood just over 6 feet tall, with a calm, grounded energy that made even the most anxious client slow their breath. His eyes didn't scan the room for approval. They stayed steady, focused, present. Rachel had met men like Malik before, or so she thought. Men who pretended to listen while waiting for their turn to speak. Men who saw her as a prize, a challenge, or worse, a transaction. But Malik was different. From the moment he touched her shoulders that first session, she sensed it. His hands weren't rushed. He didn't move like someone trying to impress. He moved like someone who understood pressure, both the kind beneath the skin and the kind that crushes lives. He never asked personal questions, never gave unsolicited advice. And that silence unnerved her more than any sweet-talking suitor ever could. She booked a second session, then a third. Each time, she left feeling like something inside her had been rearranged, not just her muscles, but her mind. Her emotions, her walls. Malik said little, but his presence lingered long after she left. One rainy Tuesday she tested him, mentioned her name, casually. "I'm sure you've heard of Simmons Co." He looked up from folding towels and simply said, "No, ma'am." Not rude. Not dismissive, just uninterested in labels. That response shook her more than any article, gossip blog, or boardroom betrayal ever had. Because Malik wasn't playing her game. He wasn't afraid of her status. He didn't want anything from her. And that made him dangerous, in a way Rachel wasn't used to. He didn't react to her flirtation, didn't light up when she hinted at wealth. So, the power dynamic shifted. Rachel, used to being chased, found herself leaning in, asking questions, staying longer. She noticed the small things. He always arrived early, left late. Helped other staff quietly, never asked for credit. He drove an old Ford F-150, worn but clean, no bumper stickers. No pretenses. And sometimes, when he thought no one was looking, he'd stare out the window, like he was watching something that no longer existed. What haunted him? Who was this man who could carry so much silence and still not sink? Rachel wanted to know, needed to know. Because beneath that calm voice and quiet strength was a mystery, and mysteries, as she knew too well, were the most dangerous kind of power. She didn't realize it then, but Malik had once walked boardrooms bigger than hers, had once signed checks that made her company's payroll look like lunch money, but now he was here, folding towels, kneading shoulders, and saying nothing, and the question that burned inside her more than any tension in her back was, why? Why would a man who could have had everything choose this? She'd soon find out, and when she did, her world, and his, would never be the same again. Rachel had faced rejection before, from banks, from investors, from stubborn city councils, but never from a man. Never like this. Malik was the first person who didn't lean in when she leaned forward, who didn't soften when she raised her voice, who didn't chase when she walked away. And that made her restless. It started with little tests. One day she wore red, her closer color. Another day she asked him where he was from, expecting him to fold under a personal question. But Malik stayed still. His answers were always brief, polite, but wrapped in a layer of unbothered calm. He was comfortable in silence, and that made Rachel uncomfortable in hers. So she did what came naturally. She reached for power. After their fourth session, she lingered in the hallway, alone with him. The spa was quiet. Rain tapped the windows like a ticking clock. She looked him in the eye and said it flat out. One night. $1 million. No smile, no tease, just a deal. He blinked once, then held her gaze for a full beat. "You're not serious," he said quietly. "I'm always serious," she replied, "and I don't like sleeping alone." Malik didn't move, didn't flinch. "That's not about money," he said. "That's about pain." Rachel's face froze. That cut deeper than any business rival ever had. She was ready to be rejected but not seen, so she pushed harder. "I'm not asking for forever. Just one night. No one has to know. Malik sighed, a quiet, exhausted sound like someone who'd heard this before in another life. "I've already lost too much," he said. "I'm not about to lose what little peace I have left." And just like that, he walked past her. No anger. No arrogance. Just quiet conviction. Rachel stood there alone, one of the wealthiest women in Texas. And somehow, in that moment, she'd never felt more exposed. Because this wasn't just rejection. This was immunity. Malik wasn't resisting her. He was untouched by her, and that terrified her more than losing a deal ever could. What kind of man turns down $1 million like it's nothing? What kind of story hides behind that kind of self-control? She didn't know it yet, but this wasn't the end of their story. It was just the offer that cracked everything wide open. Rachel Simmons was used to winning quietly, but this felt like losing loudly. She told herself it was just a moment, just a man with too much pride, too little ambition. But the sting wouldn't leave her skin. Not even after a hot shower, a double pour of bourbon, and 3 hours staring at her 84-inch TV that played but didn't distract. The rejection echoed, not because of what he said, but because of what he didn't want. Her. And worse than that, it was private, until it wasn't. 3 days later, someone leaked the security footage from the spa. No sound, just grainy video of Rachel standing too close to Malik. Her body language said it all. Confident, assertive, predatory. Then, the walk away. His, not hers. Within hours, it hit social media. CEO gets curved by spa guy. Millionaire tries to buy love, fails miserably. Hashtag powerless in Prada. Late-night talk shows turned it into punchlines. One host said, "She tried to close a deal and forgot to read the fine print. Dignity, not for sale." Rachel watched from her office. Fists clenched. The woman who never flinched in front of a boardroom now felt like she was 14 again, standing in front of a cafeteria full of laughing kids. Except this time, the cafeteria was the internet, and the world was watching. Her phone rang nonstop. Investors wanted answers. Was she unstable? Was this the start of a spiral? She told Vanessa to cancel everything. Meetings, interviews, the charity gala. Then she locked her office, pulled up her private investigator's number, and made one call. "Find out everything about him," she said. "Name, past jobs, family. I want a full report in 72 hours. Vanessa knocked softly a few minutes later. "You okay?" she asked. Rachel looked up, mask back on. "Perfect," she lied. But behind that answer was a different truth. Not rage, not revenge. Wounded pride, deep shame, and a flicker of something worse. Curiosity. Because as much as she wanted to bury the moment, delete it from the timeline of her life, she couldn't. Not until she understood. Who was Malik? And what kind of man walks away from power like that? What secret could make someone that untouchable? She wasn't ready to admit it yet. But that question was already the most valuable thing she'd never bought. The report came back faster than expected. Rachel didn't open it right away. She let it sit on her mahogany desk for hours, like a sealed letter from a past life. But eventually her curiosity won over her ego. The first page stopped her cold. Malik Jefferson. Age, 38. Birthplace, Manhattan, New York. Education, private prep schools, Harvard undergrad, Wharton MBA. She blinked. The man folding towels in Fort Worth once gave keynote speeches at investor summits. The more she read, the harder it was to breathe. Malik was the eldest son of Elias Jefferson, founder and CEO of Jefferson Financial Group, a $3.2 billion private equity empire with holdings in real estate, tech, and pharmaceuticals. Rachel knew the name. Everyone did. Elias was ruthless, brilliant, and a ghost at public events. He hadn't been seen in public in years. Rumor was he cut off his son after a scandal. The scandal was on page 4. Malik's younger brother Darius had died from an overdose 3 weeks after being promoted to partner at Jefferson Financial. No statement was made. No funeral announcement, just whispers, too much pressure, too little care. 1 month later, Malik vanished. No press, no lawsuit, no trace. Until now. Rachel leaned back in her chair, stunned. Malik hadn't fallen. He had walked away from the money, the legacy, the name, and traded it for what? Peace. Silence? A tiny room with warm towels and essential oils? She closed the file and stared out at the Dallas skyline. The man who turned down $1 million wasn't just proud. He was grieving, haunted, hiding. Suddenly her shame felt smaller, her curiosity deeper. She wanted to know, what kind of pain makes a man abandon billions to become invisible? That night she drove to Fort Worth. No appointment. No phone call. The spa was closed, but across the street lights flickered inside a barbecue joint. A sign read, Henry's Smokehouse, since 1989. She walked in, smelled mesquite and pepper rub. Behind the counter stood a broad-shouldered man in his 60s, wearing an apron and a smile. "Evening," he said. "You looking for Malik?" Rachel froze. "I'm a friend," the man nodded. "He don't talk much, but he listens better than most preachers." They sat, ate brisket, talked for 2 hours. Uncle Henry didn't give up family secrets, but he offered one truth. Malik didn't leave money. He left noise. Big difference. Rachel drove home in silence, a to-go box in her lap, a storm in her chest. She wasn't chasing Malik anymore. She was beginning to understand him, and that was more dangerous than desire ever was. The news came on a Monday morning, and it hit hard. Rachel's $15 million real estate project in Austin was on the verge of collapse. The Korean investment firm backing it, Hanmin Holdings, had grown cold overnight. Emails went unanswered. The Zoom calls were rescheduled. A polite silence from across the Pacific, which in business terms meant we're pulling out. Rachel stared at the project dashboard, heart pounding. Simmons Co. had already sunk $3.2 million into land prep, marketing, and early development. If Hanmin backed out, the company wouldn't survive the blow. Her team scrambled. Vanessa worked the phones. Legal sent contract reminders. But nothing moved the needle. Rachel tried to hold it together, but in truth she felt like she was holding a glass empire, and every vibration was a crack waiting to shatter. By Thursday the board was panicking. Then Malik showed up. He walked into her office like he'd never left the spa, wearing a button-down dark jeans and a confidence that wasn't loud but couldn't be ignored. Rachel blinked. "I didn't call you." "I know," he said, "but I heard." "How?" He shrugged. "You're not the only one with connections." Before she could speak, he asked, "Is it Hanmin Holdings?" Rachel nodded. "They're ghosting us." He paced slowly. "Have you met them in person?" "No." "We tried, but language barriers, cultural gaps. I can fix it." Rachel raised an eyebrow. "How?" He looked her square in the eye. "I lived in Seoul for 5 years. I led 2 cross-border deals. I know their chairman. I know how they think." Silence. Then, slowly, hope. Hours later, they were in a downtown Dallas conference room, facing 2 sharply dressed Korean executives and a translator. Rachel barely spoke. Malik did the rest, not just in fluent Korean, but with context. He told stories. Bridged value systems. He knew when to push, when to pause, and, most importantly, when to listen. By the end of the meeting, the Hanmin reps smiled. They stood, shook hands, signed the revised term sheet. $15 million secured. Rachel sat motionless, stunned. "You just saved my company." Malik looked down for a second, then said, "No. I just reminded them what trust looks like." And in that moment, Rachel saw it. This man wasn't running from business. He was walking away from a kind that broke people, but he hadn't forgotten how to build. Only now, he built from peace, not pressure, and maybe, just maybe, he'd show her how. Michael Whitmore had a way of showing up when the cameras were back on. Rachel wasn't surprised when she saw his name on her assistant's tablet. He'd requested a lunch. "Just to talk," he said. She agreed, not because she owed him anything, those debts were long paid, but because something inside her had shifted, and she wanted to see if he'd notice. They met at a polished steakhouse in uptown Dallas. The kind of place where the waiters wore cufflinks and remembered your martini order from 6 months ago. Michael walked in like he still owned the room. Tailored navy blazer. Smile that had once closed juries and opened venture capital checks. He leaned in for a cheek kiss. Rachel offered a handshake instead. Small talk. Stocks. The market. Real estate chatter. Then he shifted gears. I saw the news. Korean deal went through. Impressive. She nodded, sipping her tea. I also heard you had some help. Rachel's eyebrow rose slightly. You always did have a thing for fixing broken toys, he said. There it was. The old Michael. Charming, sharp, cruel under breath. She didn't flinch. I didn't need fixing, she said. I needed peace. He tilted his head. And you found it? In a spa? She set her fork down, calmly. I found it in someone who didn't want anything from me. No leverage, no spotlight, just truth. Michael shifted in his chair. You know, he said, voice softening, we made a good team once. No, Rachel replied. We made a good photo. He fell quiet. I thought maybe we could try again? Take it slow. Rachel looked out the window. The skyline gleamed, but it wasn't the city that had changed. It was her. The woman who once needed validation from power now found it in silence, stillness, and strength that wasn't loud. She turned back to Michael. You loved who I was on paper. He loves who I am when the paper burns. Michael said nothing. The check came. She paid it. As she stood, he reached out. Rachel. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Take care, Michael. Then she walked away, not out of pain or spite, but with the quiet confidence of someone who finally knew her worth. Rachel thought the worst was over, but power never retreats quietly. 2 weeks after securing the Korean deal, her phone lit up with a headline that made her stomach drop. Jefferson Financial acquires 12% stake in Simmons Company through silent partners. Malik's last name, his father's empire. And now, her biggest threat. She called her legal team. They confirmed it. Technically, the shares were acquired legally through shell firms and offshore investors. A classic hostile move, silent, strategic, and personal. Rachel knew this wasn't business. It was a warning. She hadn't just touched Malik's heart. She'd stirred his father's silence. That afternoon, she found Malik outside Uncle Henry's smokehouse, loading brisket trays for a veterans event. She handed him the tablet. Did you know? He read it once, then set it down. I told him I was done, he said. I meant it. Rachel's voice cracked. He's going to dismantle everything I built. Malik looked her straight in the eye. No, he's going to try. What followed was quiet but fierce. Malik called a private number. No pleasantries. Don't use my name to destroy good people, he said. You want to fight? Fight me directly. A pause. Then, you think silence is power, but I'm done being quiet. The next day, Elias Jefferson's legal team received an unexpected motion. Buried deep in the Jefferson Family Trust was a clause, signed before Darius's death, that granted Malik limited override rights on ethical grounds. It had never been tested, never needed, until now. Malik activated it. He couldn't stop the world, but he could stop his father. The takeover stalled. Elias was forced to withdraw. Publicly, it was market volatility. Privately, it was defeat. Rachel didn't celebrate. She sat with Malik later that week under a live oak tree, hands wrapped around coffee mugs. You saved me, she said. He shook his head. No, I just protected what mattered. She reached for his hand. This time he didn't pull away, and in that moment she realized power wasn't just about building walls. It was about knowing when to tear them down, and who to let in when you do. The sun was slipping behind the Texas hills, casting gold across the wide open sky. On the back porch of Rachel's ranch house, 2 cups of coffee steamed gently. She and Malik sat in silence, the kind that felt full, not empty. It had been weeks since the attempted takeover. The world had gone quiet again, but this time it was a good quiet. Rachel looked over at him. You could have walked away again, she said. You didn't. Malik didn't smile. He just held her gaze. I walked away from noise, he said, not from you. She paused. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from recognition. Of something real, finally. Malik stood, walked a few steps toward the edge of the deck, then turned. "No ring," he said. "No speech, just truth." He took a deep breath. "You offered me $1 million once, for one night. Now I'm offering something better, for every night." Rachel laughed softly, not out of disbelief, but out of release. "I don't need a ring," she said. "I just need someone who stays when it's quiet." Malik stepped closer, took her hand. And in that moment there were no boardrooms, no headlines, just two people who had lost too much, and finally found enough. Rachel whispered, "Yes," not to a question, but to a life. The wedding wasn't grand, no designer gowns, no media coverage, no boardroom guest list, just a Texas sky, a wooden arch wrapped in wildflowers, and the smell of Uncle Henry's brisket wafting through the air. Rachel wore soft linen and bare feet. Malik wore his father's old watch, polished, worn, forgiven. They said their vows beneath a live oak, surrounded by people who had stayed when it mattered. Vanessa cried. Uncle Henry grinned like he was watching a sunrise. But the moment that stopped time came later, after the music faded, after the sun dipped below the pasture. A black SUV pulled up quietly to the edge of the ranch. No bodyguards, no entourage. Elias Jefferson stepped out alone. He didn't ask to join the party. He didn't shake hands. He walked up to Malik, placed a small bonsai tree in his son's arms, and said only 6 words, "For healing." "I'm ready to listen." Then he turned, got back into the SUV, and disappeared into the night. Malik stood still, eyes wet, heart full. Rachel walked over, placed her hand on his back. "Forgiveness," she whispered, "is the richest inheritance." And with that, the noise of the past finally faded. No more deals to chase, no more power to prove, just peace. And the promise of tomorrow. Some say power comes from how loud you speak, how many zeros are on your check, or how many buildings bear your name. But Rachel and Malik taught us something different. Real power is knowing when to walk away from noise, and when to lean into stillness. It's in the courage to reject what the world calls success, in favor of what your soul calls peace. Rachel chased control and found it in vulnerability. Malik carried silence and turned it into strength. They both had every reason to stay guarded, jaded, distant, but they chose connection over ego, forgiveness over pride. And in doing so, they proved something rare, that even in a world built on deals, titles, and image, the most valuable thing you can offer is truth. So if you're sitting there, 20 years into a career, wondering what's next, maybe it's not more. Maybe it's real. If someone offered you $1 million for a single night, but it would cost you your peace, your dignity, or a part of your past, what would you do? Would you take the deal or walk away? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's talk about worth, choices, and what truly matters in life. If it were me, I might say yes, because I truly need the money to take care of my family. There are just so many things to pay for. If you feel the same, please give this video a like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear this story. Thank you so much for listening.